What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Epic Dad Legacy Podcast. Drew here, your host. Hey, I am pumped for this episode of the podcast, but before we hop into it, a couple housekeeping notes. One, I would really appreciate it if you guys would drop down below and leave us a review. Let us know what you think about the show. We've gotten some great feedback and we feel like we're, on the right track, but anything we get as far as reviews is just going to help us get exposed to more dads out there that we really want to share our message with. So the more reviews we get, the higher ranking we're going to get, the more people are going to find us, and the more value ultimately we can provide. So if you guys have gotten any value from the show, if you've gotten one nugget, away, one golden nugget or takeaway that's made an impact for you as a dad, please drop down below and just leave us a review. It takes about 20 seconds and we'd appreciate it. Secondly is we have got an awesome challenge. It's called the Epic Dad 7-Day Challenge. Now what this is a free email challenge that if you opt in for, you're going to get an email from me for about 7 days in a row, hence the 7-day challenge. That is going to ultimately help you understand how to create more time for yourself, create more space, create more intentionality into your life. That's going to ultimately help you be a better dad. And so if you feel like you're struggling with time, in balance and trying to get it all done, you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, I want you guys to drop down into the show notes and opt in for our Epic Dad 7-Day Challenge. This challenge is going to be hard, right? It's called a challenge, but I promise you this, it's only going to take you about 10, 20 minutes at the longest to complete each challenge every day. And by the end of those 7 days, I guarantee that you are going to be on a path to being a better dad, a better, intentional father, someone that, is less stressed, has more time in their schedule. So if that's you, if you guys are feeling stressed and overwhelmed, please drop down below, opt in. It's totally free. And we've gotten a lot of great feedback from this challenge. And so if that's you, hit down below and hit the link. Okay. So into the episode, guys, I am super pumped to bring on Maddie Anderson today. So, Maddie is our first female, that we've had on the show. Bad on me for not doing this before. Right. And us as dads, we get together in our dad space. We talk about dad stuff. We talk about, being good fathers, providers and all that stuff. But the conversation very rarely goes to, okay, what is a different angle to look at this, right? And so Maddie is coming on today to give us a glimpse into her perspective as being a girl and having an amazing girl dad that has instilled some values in her and her sisters that have set them up for success. And so the conversation here with Maddie is just awesome, guys. You guys are gonna love it, and it just lends a different perspective than what we typically talk about here on the show. And so I want to thank Maddie for coming on. Maddie has just written a book that just launched. You guys can go find it on Amazon. I'll link down to the show notes below, but the book is called GirlDad: Stories, Lessons, and Advice from Girl Dads and Their Daughters. And so if you guys are a girl dad, or even if you're not, I think you're going to take away a lot of valuable lessons from here that is from the perspective, of a daughter, right? And not of a dad. And I think that's super important for us to shift the lens that we're coming to the conversation with. So without any further ado, guys, let's welcome Maddie to the show and let's hop into the episode.
Are you ready to become the dad you know you are meant to be? Good, because this is the Epic Dad Legacy Podcast, where imperfect action is better than perfect ideas, promises kept are more important than promises made, and nothing happens unless you make it happen. My name is Drew, father of 3, and founder of the Epic Dad Company. My mission is to help dads up their game and become the husbands, fathers, and men they're called to be. Thanks for listening. Now let's start the episode.
All right, Madeline Anderson, what is going on?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. So Madeline, but you go by Maddie, is that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, awesome. Well, Maddie, thank you for hopping on.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I brought you on really to talk. One, you're the first female we've had on the podcast. So we've had like 33 episodes. And we have, we talk a lot about dad stuff, right? But we have yet to bring on somebody that has a different perspective. And so I think I'm really pumped for this conversation because it's probably going to go down places that we haven't talked about before that are super important for us to think through, as dads, especially as girl dads. So super honored to have you on. You've got a book that just launched. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes. 2 days ago. It's called
Okay.
GirlDad.
Called GirlDad. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so the book, GirlDad: Stories, Lessons, Advice from Girl Dads and Their Daughters. So obviously, your dad's your girl dad, and you've got a couple of sisters. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I have two younger sisters, so I'm the oldest of three girls. So my dad is, well trained in the girl dad world.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. What inspired you to write the book?
Yeah, I started writing it a little over 2 years ago. But I think the idea really came when I first started college. It was really the first time I looked in the mirror and realized how lucky I was. And I grew up, with a great dad. I knew I had a great dad. He's awesome. So supportive, loving, kind, helped build my confidence, all that. But I kind of just thought that's what dads do. And, all dads are like that. Like that's the dad's job. And when I got to college and I was surrounded by so many new people and got to meet people from all different backgrounds and everything, I realized that's simply not the case. And it's unfortunately more rare to have that kind of dad. And I wanted to change that. So the purpose of the book is really to inspire other dads out there to be, more intentional and present and more girl dad like. And ultimately, I want every girl out there to have the opportunity that I have, and feel the kind of relationship that I feel with my dad. So yeah, it's been a great journey.
I mean, as a girl dad, right? I've got two little ones,
Yeah.
6 and 4. It's tough. Like growing up, I always knew I was gonna have kids, but I always thought like, yeah, I'll have sons for sure. I'll have hunting. We'll go hunting all the time, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, and with my first one, we didn't know if she was gonna be a girl or a boy until she was born. And I was kind of like holding out hope. I was like, oh man, I want a boy, I want a boy. But like the second she was born, I was like, I'm a girl dad. Like this is awesome. Like complete adoption of it. And it's been challenging, because I think to your point, like it's probably rare, right? To have a dad that's like that's going to be supportive. Not that dads don't want to be supportive, but it takes a lot of intentionality, a lot of time and effort to put towards that. And it's stuff that, like you said, you didn't really realize that other dads didn't do that, right? And especially as a kid, as a daughter, you're not realizing how much effort that your dad's actually putting into it until later, until after the fact. So can totally appreciate that. And girls are tough. It's tough from a dad's perspective, because you see, this beautiful little girl, and you want to love and support, but at the same time, like, at some point in time, she's going to step out of the nest, right? And head off to college or wherever she's going. And like part of your job too is to help prepare her for that world, to be able to make those right decisions and things like that. So I'd love to know, like, obviously your dad has had a huge impact on your life. So I'd love to know kind of a little bit about him, and what ultimately has been the impact of having an awesome girl dad.
Yeah, definitely. Well, he's incredible. He's super smart, driven, motivated, funny, compassionate, and really just an inspiration all over. And I think the impact that he's had, I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, I literally wrote a book about it. So there's been a lot of things, but to your point, he definitely taught us a lot. He didn't just like go through the motions and protect us and like keep us in a little bubble or anything. Like when he would help us fix things or even like patching a hole on the wall, right? Like he would bring us in and be like, this is step 1, this is step 2. And he would have us do it sometimes too. And he gave us our own little tool belts when we were kids. So when he would like fix stuff around the house, like we'd be walking around with our tool belt and like have our like mini hammer that had flowers on it. And, it made it like so fun. So I think he wasn't afraid to involve us in anything. And then when I started, growing up a little bit and was able to have more conversations that were, higher level, he would involve me in work and he would talk about his day at work and what projects he's working on. He's an engineer, so they're sometimes a little bit like intense. Like I'm like, what? But he would include me in them. And sometimes on the weekends, if he had to work, he would bring me and my sisters into his office and we would like be drawing on blueprints. But it was cool because we never felt like, like we saw him working so hard, but we never felt like, oh, he's doing that and it's like taking away from time with us. He was very, very involved. And when he works really hard and he still does, he works all the time, but the time that he spends with us, he's there and he's present. And that's what makes all the difference. And I think that that's like the number one piece of advice for all dads out there is no matter how much time you have, even if it's like 5 minutes, just be there, look her in the eyes, like be present and don't take those little moments for granted, because life goes by really fast, and you know, you have to show up.
Yeah. No, that's great. And some of the takeaways from your book, and we'll dive into, you know, to a few components. And you already mentioned one, which I think is awesome, is kind of, you know, including, you know, your daughter and your activities and things like that. And we'll dive into that. But like, before we even do, like, ultimately, you know, what is a girl dad, right? Like, it's obviously you have a daughter, you know, that's kind of, you know, part of the course, but yeah, there's a lot of dads out there that have daughters that I wouldn't necessarily call a girl dad, right? So how would you define it, and like, how can guys, you know, accept that as their persona?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to intention. So a girl dad is intentionally a girl dad, right? Like, they show up for their daughter, they love her, they support her no matter what, and she feels that love. And that's really all it is. And there's so many ways that you can be a girl dad, and there's so many components of that, and I'm sure we'll get into a lot of that. But at the end of the day, that's what it is. You're there for her.
Yeah. And you guys can't see unless you're watching on YouTube, but so girl dad right there, girl dad AF. So
I love that.
Yeah. So I'm definitely one of them. And it's funny you mentioned the work thing. Like, I work constantly, you know, like, you know, working full time, then trying to run a business, do a podcast, all that stuff. Right. And it's a lot. So I think that point of intentionality is super important. You know, it's not that like you have to spend every waking hour with your kids, because that's not doable, one. And then two, your kids don't need that. Like, what they need is they need intentional time with dad. Like you said, it could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, it could be, you know, laying down and playing a card game or whatever, but like just being in the moment, being present, no distractions, and just being there and filling your kid's bucket. So that's a huge one. And then the other one you mentioned too was about work. And I actually had a specific question about work, because I know a lot of guys that listen to this podcast, and really just dads in general, you know, we get so focused on our role as like the provider, right? We're like, oh, I got to go out and provide. And we've got all these financial goals and career goals and all that stuff. And it's interesting, right? Because you mentioned, you know, your dad was an engineer and like you knew what he did, but like, how important was it to you as a daughter of like, my dad is super successful in his career, or, you know, brings home a ton of money, or all the stuff that dads usually are going after to try to provide for their family, or at least we say we're trying to, you know, we're doing it for our family. You know, how important was that to you as a daughter growing up, and looking at your dad as like what he actually did?
I mean, when it comes to the like money and all that, not important at all, right? Like all we care about is like, that's my dad. I love my dad. He's great. You know, like that's when you're a child, right? But I think as you start to grow up, when the dad is able to share those goals and be like, this is what I'm striving to get towards, and this is why I'm working so hard, then it's really motivating. And I think it's so important to communicate that with your daughter, because on the contrary, if you're teaching her that, you know, you work really hard, but you're like laser focused in your work, and you don't talk to her about work, and if anything, you're like, oh, I have to work, like this is so annoying, or like I'm just so busy, I'm so stressed, and you're talking to your partner like that, like, oh, I hate this, and then, you know, you're dismissing time with your daughter because you have to do this thing that you hate, then your daughter's growing up and she's looking at you and she's like, okay, well, work sucks, right? Like, look at my dad, he's not happy. And also, why is my dad putting work that he hates above me? You know, like, how do you think that makes her feel, right? But if you teach her like, hey, having a strong work ethic is so important, here's why, and here's why I'm working this job, this is why I do this, I love this aspect of it. And, you know, if you can teach her things along the way, then she goes into, you know, high school or even middle school, and she's feeling motivated because she wants to find a job that she loves, and she feels like, you know, that's really cool that my dad works so hard, I want to work so hard, and I want to be like my dad. And it's all about how you frame it. Even if it's the same job and you actually hate it, like, just minimize those comments, I think, and also reevaluate what you're doing. Like, if you hate it, why are you doing it? You know, like, there's something else.
there's a good quote that I see like all the time on Instagram and TikTok and all this, whatever, you know, like one of the reels or something, that is basically like, hey, if, you know, we tell our kids all the time, right, when they're little, like, hey, you can go do whatever you want to, you can go create your dreams, blah, 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 and then they look at you, at dad and mom, and they're like, okay, well, why aren't you doing that?
True,
Yeah.
true.
So, I mean, like, in my opinion is, and I could be totally wrong, right? Like, I'm not a daughter, so I hope that I'm coming about this in the right way, but I feel like I need to lead by example, right?
100%.
And if I tell my daughter those things and I'm not doing them, like she's going to see that whether she says it or not, and that's going to have a huge impact on her. And so, like, we've started to, my kids are still young, right? They're 6 and 4, and then 8 months or 9 months. Murphy is, and we started to really think about like some house rules, right? That's like not just for my kids, but like for our whole family, right?
Right.
And like one of them is, hey, if there's trash on the ground, like you pick it up, even if it's not your mess, right? Like you pick it up, you take responsibility for it. And I'll catch my daughter like calling me out, right? Like there'll be like something on the floor and I'll walk past and she's like, Dad, like that, what's our rule? And so I think it's, but all that to say, like us as dads have to lead by example, I think. And if we're not going out and, even if we don't like what we do, right? Like we can always put the frame around it, that, hey, what I do, maybe I'm not passionate about, but I am passionate about the provision it provides for my family, right? I'm passionate about, some of the things that I get to work on, some of my coworkers and things like that, and the impact I am having. So yeah, I think that's huge.
Yeah, I agree. Communication is key. That it'll save you in so many ways.
Yeah. Well, so talk me through some of the points of the book. You kind of break it out into chapters, and each one's kind of like a value set, right? Or something you bring to the table as a dad, and something you can adopt. I'd love to, we don't have to walk through all of them, but maybe 2 or 3 that you think are super important that you see a lot of dads failing on, especially as you got into college and saw some of your friends and their fathers and thought, hey, I thought mine was just normal.
Yeah. I think, one that's really important that is actually fun for the dad is try to relate to her, and especially at a young age, recognize that, yeah, she's a girl, but that doesn't mean that she can't love what you love. And, especially if she's your biological daughter, that girl is like 50% of you, right? So you're the odds of having some similar interests are very high. So I think, and again, I'm not a dad, so I'm just assuming that this is how some dads think. I think sometimes when they find out they're having a daughter, they're like, I don't speak that language. Instead, I'm just going to kind of remove myself from those conversations. And like, let's say you love sports, right? You're like, okay, well, she's a girl. Like, I'm just going to not talk about that in front of her. And like, you're doing yourself a huge disservice if that's the case. If you love sports, then you should teach your daughter all about sports, especially at a young age, so that she can grow up having that appreciation and you guys can bond over that. And she'll be by your side watching the football games, basketball games, like whatever. And she'll get it, and I think that you should really take a second to look at all of your interests and then try to involve her as much as you can in those. And I know it's hard when she's young, and she might like be like, oh, this is boring, or like be distracted or whatever, but just like, keep in like making comments, or and realize how she's reacting to it. If she's like really not liking it, okay, try something else. But like, just try to relate to her and try to help her see into your world as much as you see into hers, and find that common ground so you can bond over things and grow up together, like, and have those, have that great relationship.
Yeah. Did you guys bond over sports?
He doesn't watch a ton of sports, but we bonded over playing sports. So
yeah,
he plays golf. So he taught me how to play golf when I was like 4.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, he like bought me this little Snoopy set. I had like 4 clubs, and it was awesome. But he would take me out, and he would be golfing with his friends, and I would like go golfing with him and maybe some of the friends' sons, and it'd be like us out on the course. And, sometimes I would just be looking at the bunnies, or like just hanging out, like not driving the cart, but like just driving in the cart and having a blast out there, and just being with him out there, even though we weren't like, golf is not like you're sitting talking the whole time, you're out swinging and all that. But yeah, it became our thing. And now every time I go see him, we try to go golfing together, or like make a point to golf when we're traveling together or whatever. So it's been a fun thing that we've bonded over. And he's also been really active in all of my sports growing up. He was coaching soccer for me for years. And it's funny, on that note, he really built my confidence when it came to sports, probably more than I deserved. Like I would go to soccer games thinking like, oh, I'm going to score a goal today.
I'm the shit.
Like,
yeah.
Like I got this in the bag. This is easy, and like looking back, I probably was like not the best soccer player on the field, but like I felt it. Like I walked
super
in there
confident
and I was
though.
Let's go. Yeah. Which honestly, like, thank goodness, because I think that's translated a lot to my work ethic and how I felt like going into college. Like I was just confident that I was going to thrive, and it's because he would build me up and pump me up before matches and be there at my games and cheer me on all the time. And again, it's one of those things that you take for granted, because now that I'm like an adult, I'm looking at how many hours he spent on the weekends or taking me to practice. And it's a lot, like that's a huge commitment from a father. And I applaud all you dads out there that are showing up for your kids, because it's
we got basketball practice at 5:45 today. So
yeah.
No, it's interesting that, I mean, you're talking about sports and like selfishly, I'd love to kind of go down the rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
Because I have two girls, right? And I played collegiate baseball. I'm super competitive, right? I was in the military. Yeah. That's like, I have a drive there with being competitive. And I find myself struggling a little bit with that, right? Because hey, she's 6, right? Yeah. My oldest one. And I want to be hard on her, but at the same time, I'm like, I need to support her, right? And like build that confidence. And it's a delicate balance, I think, between like pushing them hard enough to where they get outside their comfort zone, to where they're going to fail and they're going to learn from that. Versus just being like the rah cheerleader, like you got this, you can do it, so I think there has to be that balance there. So I'd love to know, like you said, your dad would build your confidence. Like I'm assuming too, that he was pushing you as well, right?
Oh yeah. And I think when it comes to failure, that's the perfect opportunity to also support her and be like, I'm so proud of you. Like, you failed or whatever the situation is, but like, it's how you overcome this and it's what you learn from it. That's what matters. And really, really drill that in her, because then she's not afraid of failure. And that, I mean, I can't even tell you how valuable that is, right?
It's such an important lesson. And we, so we had this video go viral on Instagram. I don't know if you've seen it yet. It's ridiculous. My daughters, it was just like a Saturday. We were just like hanging out and it was a nice day outside. And they were like, hey, Dad, we want to race you. Like in a foot race.
I saw that.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. And then like part of me was like, okay, should I just like, go half-assed and like let him beat me? Like, oh, good job. Yeah. Or should I just like smoke him? And like, and like have that lesson that like teaching most, right? And so you guys go watch the video. It's hilarious. I just smoked the crap out of my kids and they're all like, but it's that lesson, right? Of like, hey, you're going to fail, like no matter how hard you try. Like there's going to be somebody better, like you're going to get beat. Totally. But like, how do you, like you said, pick yourself up, like use that as a learning opportunity to focus on like, okay, where are my weaknesses? How do I need to get better? And then also just to normalize that, hey, you're not going to be the best at everything. Like if you want to be the best at everything, you're going to have to work really freaking hard.
Yeah, totally. Those are all really, really important things to instill in her. And I'm sure it's way more challenging, like, easier said than done, but it's really good to keep in mind.
Yeah, for sure. So what's something else? What's another value set that you got in the book?
I would say make her feel special, especially, as she's a little girl, like just really think about, it's hard to put yourself in the mind of a little girl, I'm sure, as an adult man, but hopefully the book can help with that a little bit, but it's all those little things that make all the difference. So when it comes to packing her lunch, one girl or one daughter shared about when her dad would take cookie cutters and like make her sandwiches into like hearts for Valentine's Day, right? Like it doesn't take all that much energy from the dad, but like she opens her lunch and she's like, oh my gosh, like, yay, and then there's like a little note in there that says, have a great day, love, Dad. Like that's it. That's all it takes. And
Mm.
just, all those little things you can do throughout the years to make her feel loved and special, they will go so far. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of more, but I mean, sticky notes throughout the house.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would
Yeah.
say too, so from my perspective, and probably from like a guy's perspective, right?
Yeah.
It's so funny because like we don't think about that shit at all,
Yeah.
it's hilarious, right? And then you translate that also to a relationship, right? Like once you get
Yeah.
older, you have a girlfriend, getting married, you have a spouse, it's the same thing, right? Like I want to make sure
Yeah.
my wife feels special, right? And feels
Yeah.
noticed and appreciated. And it's the little things like that. And I'll be the first to admit I struggle with it a lot just because I'm not like that I'm not that guy, right? But
Mhm.
you mentioned something in there about a notes, like on your phone and your notes. I think that's a great idea
Yeah.
of, just like, hey, if your daughter says something like she likes this or whatever, like just jot it down your note, right? You can go back
Yeah.
to it. And so that way you kind of have a running list because that's just not the way, a guy's brain is wired typically. Right?
Yeah.
It's you have to put some intention behind it.
Yeah, definitely. And then it's easy to look back on. Like my notes, it's funny, I just was looking at that today. I have a Christmas list, for everyone. And I think I started it in like February, but someone said something, I'm like, oh, gotta add that to the list because I'm definitely going to forget about it. But if it's here, then I'll be able to reference it. And that's easy. And also it's about making moments special. And again, that comes down to intentionality, but you can make her feel special by being present. And so I gave an example in the book, but just a hypothetical situation. Both situations cost the same amount of time and money. But let's just say it's Saturday morning, you're making breakfast with your family, you're making pancakes, and you make them, you go and you sit down at your table. Maybe she's on her phone or iPad or whatever, you're reading an email, you're eating breakfast, she asks you a question, you answer it, and then you go back to whatever you're doing. Maybe she goes back to her room, whatever. But then situation 2 is you're making pancakes again, but this time you make them into a heart-shaped pancake or Mickey Mouse or snowman, and then you sit down and you have a no phone rule. So everyone is present and you're asking her high impact questions, not anything she can necessarily say yes or no to, and then, get back to whatever. And you're asking her about her week and, her favorite classes in school, and you're learning about her and you're building that relationship. And again, that's all it takes. Like now she feels special. You're looking her in the eyes, you're asking her about her interests, and whether she knows it or not, like those moments are building blocks for the future when she comes to you and asks for your advice on a relationship or a career or just college stuff. Like it's like those moments where you can be present means so much later on.
And I would say too, so we have kind of a rule in our house. It's a dinner rule, right? It's like no matter what's going on, like we're gonna sit down and have dinner.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no phones, no electronics, anything like that. And we go through our day, and my kids are younger, and so as they get older, probably the questions will change a little bit.
Totally.
But we talk about, hey, what were the 3 best things that happened today, right? And we'll talk through that, and then we'll say, hey, what's one thing you failed at today, right? And we'll talk through that. But I'll just say to the dads out there, like that's, and I'll kind of shift the perspective from the daughter to the dad here. It's like dads, like that's your job to set that frame, right? It's not going to happen unless you set the intention and make it happen and make it a priority. And so we get super busy, right? A lot of pressures, work, career, family, etc. But it doesn't take that much effort just to take that intention and set that framework, right? And that's kind of setting that container for the family to be successful.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I love the 3 things that went well and 1 that went or could have gone better. I think that's so powerful. And, she can learn a lot from you based on your answers too. If, it goes back and forth. Actually, one dad that I interviewed, he did that same setup, but it was called Roses and Thorns. And I thought that was pretty cute. So it's like, okay, what were your roses for today? And, what was the thorn? And it was the same idea, but in doing that, you're able to get her to talk about things that she really likes. And then you understand a little bit about, what might be bothering her. And I think having that open communication where you ask her like, where were your thorns today, especially as she gets into like middle school, and like, people can be mean, and like there's all kinds of situations that arise in middle school, right? We've all been there. So by asking her like, what were your thorns, or maybe like, what's one thing that could have gone better today, you might find out that she's struggling with something, and had you not opened that conversation, you might never know. And those are important ways that you can show up and be there for your daughter. And I think, like you said, it doesn't take all that much effort, but the impact is so powerful.
Mm. So I read a book a while ago. I forget the author. I'll have to look it up. And I'm sure you've read it as well, or know of it. But it's Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. And I'll put a link into that one as well in the show notes. But was a great book. And one of my big takeaways from that was really about, like, as a father, you see kind of the way culture is going lately, right? Through social media and just the glorification of materialistic things, right?
Right.
And especially with women and young girls. And so, part of that book was really about how you as the dad have to protect your daughter from that type of stuff. And it comes off like you're being like overly strict, in some cases, like, no, sorry, you're not spending the night at a friend's house or something like that. And it's just, it kind of like sets you up. And again, my daughters are young, and I'll get into teenage years, which are going to be horrendous, I'm sure. But where there's a lot of backlash, like from your daughter, right? And she may not understand that, right? But I think deep down, and you let me know if I'm incorrect here. I'm not a girl, right? But the assumption from a dad is like, hey, she's having backlash at me. She's coming after me. But I think from the daughter's perspective, it's really like she understands that you're doing that like because you love her, because you protect her. And like, even though she's going to be a little bit difficult to work with, I think it's better to go down that route because she knows that you care about her rather than just saying, yes, sure, go do whatever you want. Right.
Yep. No,
so I'd like to get your perspective on that through your teenage years.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It was so annoying when you get told no, like, let me tell you, like, especially because at that moment, you're the oldest you've ever been. And I feel like you think you're so mature and you know everything and you're completely capable of whatever it is you're asking for, or like you deserve that because like whatever, right? You're in that phase. But when you get told no, it can be super frustrating. And one thing that my dad always did was he would say, no, because I care about you and love you. And if I didn't care about you and love you, I would say yes. And then it's like, like, how are you supposed to argue with that? Right. Like, you're like, well, okay, fine. Like, right.
I wish you wouldn't love me so much. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You really can't argue with that one. But I think that's a great way to go about that. And I'm sure, for any dads out there that have teenage daughters, it's just a phase. But I think keeping that in mind is really powerful, because it's also really frustrating if you just constantly get told no with no explanation. Like, you should always try to say like, because this and that, or like your safety, or whatever reason it is that you're saying no. Communicate that with her, because it's she doesn't want to be just like locked up or told no all the time, because then she's gonna potentially try to rebel or whatever. There's all kinds of consequences. But with open communication always, and telling her that it's no because you care about her, you're gonna be golden.
Well, good. Well, excuse me, can't talk. One of the other takeaways I had about your book was, and this, I'm probably not going to phrase this in the right way, but a girl really wants her dad to be like proud of her, right, and accepting of her. And I think before I read your book, like, I understood that, but I think afterwards was like, wow, that's really like a huge thing, right? And so I've even found myself starting to change some of my behavior, since reading the book, just in my home, right? I have my kids will come up and they'll have a little coloring that they drew or whatever, and they're looking like, hey, Dad, what do you think of this? And it, there's a couple ways you could go with that, right? But I think it's just super important to let them know that like they are appreciated, you're proud of them, and you're just accepting of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would come home with drawings from school, from art class or whatever, and they were horrendous, like, so like just scribbles, you know. And the next day they're hanging in his little like workshop in the garage, and I think that it made all the difference. He said like, awesome, you know, but then I would walk in the garage and I would see it hanging up, and I was like, he really loves this, like, that's great, you know, I'm gonna keep doing this. And so it's those little things. It's not just your words, but it's your actions, and just showing that you're proud of her. It makes a huge difference. And even just talking to your friends about things that she's accomplished, you know, obviously your girls are young, but I think that it's really powerful as she starts to, you know, grow up, and when she's a teenager and in high school, if if one of your friends come over and she's talking to them and they're like, oh, you know, I heard you, you know, did this and that. It feels so good. They're like, you know, your dad told me that, you know, you accomplished this, and you're like, wow, he said that, like, cool, you know. And then you feel all good, and it's not hard. You're just talking to your friend, but it really does make the difference.
And I think one thing that I'm trying to be very intentional about with my girls, and it's very difficult to do, is to have the balance there between, you know, the dad's support of what they're doing, and me being proud of them versus them being proud of themselves. And which is very hard to do, right? And we talked about building up confidence and things like that too. But I want to be, you know, when my kids are older and they're outside the nest, right? And they're making their own decisions, I want them to make those decisions for them, because that's what they want to do, and not to go make dad proud, or what is my dad going to think about this, or anything like that, right? Like, I'm going to be proud of them no matter what they do. And I hope they know that, and I'm sure they will. But, you know, so like that same situation, right, where my kid brings up drawing, and she says, hey, Dad, what do you think about this? A lot of times my first reaction will be like, well, what do you think about it? You know, or are you proud of it? Like, is that your best work? You know, and I don't know if that's the right move or not, but I think that's the thinking behind it, is like, Dad's going to be proud of you. I want you to make decisions that you're going to be proud of.
Absolutely. And really, in those big moments in her life, you know, look her in the eyes and really be present. Again, that's the common theme, right? Be present and ask her, you know, like, or tell her, you should be so proud of yourself. Look at what you've done. Look at this impact you've had, or look at how you've grown, you know, all these things you've accomplished in your life, and all the things you're going to continue to do. Like, you should be so proud of yourself, and mean it, you know. And that's going to set her up for so much success, because girls need confidence. Like, it is tough out there, and it's only getting tougher with, you know, social media and all that. Like, we judge ourselves, we're hard on ourselves, and we care too much about, you know, how we look or what people think of us. And when your dad can really instill that confidence, it changes you. And I think that's a lot of what I was seeing, you know, around me for the first time in college. I was just like realizing I've had this support from my dad, and he's helped create, you know, the confidence that I have, and I can't thank him enough for it. And I really, really want all girls to be able to have that same confidence and feel that support, and just love from their dads. I think it's way more impactful than anyone even like grasps, right? Like, it's huge.
Yeah, so, I would say, especially now, right? Like, I mean, given the culture we're in, like I talked about before, social media, right? Like, I can't imagine being a teenage girl right now, you know, would just be insane, right? Like the validation you're trying to seek through social media that like is never going to be there, you know, and it's just an empty vessel that you're trying to get that validation from, you know. And so I think like now it's more important than ever for girl dads really to step up and like instill some of those values in their daughters, just to set them up for success. Like I'm not going to give my kid a phone until they're like 18, you know. I mean, it's just crazy the world we're living in. And I probably renege on that, I'm sure. 17. But you know, but like it's a balance again, right? I think that's kind of like one of the themes of this conversation is, you know, yes, you want to protect them, right? But at the same time, like you have to expose them to the world, you know? And so like through social media, there's, you know, a couple of different approaches, right? Is, my daughter's never going to be on it. You know, I'm going to ban her. She's not getting a phone until she's 18, like I said. And then there's the other one where it's like, all right, let's just give her a phone and whatever happens. Like that's not the
Yeah.
right approach either. So
Right.
I think there's some nuance there that like you have to expose your kid to the world and the realities of the world.
Yeah.
And then have those tough conversations with them about, that worldview, being a different way than what we have with our family, and instilling those value sets in them. And so it's, like I said, it's that balance of protecting versus setting up for success in the realities of the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So did your dad let you guys have social media?
You know, social media just was becoming a thing as I was in high school. I don't even think he knew. Being honest, I think like it was just kind of like everyone's downloading Instagram and like, but to be fair, like back when Instagram first started, it was not the way it is today.
Yeah,
like
no.
We were the things we were posting, it's like so cringy to look back on, but it's like super filter, like peace signs, like just like it wasn't like a toxic thing where you were comparing yourself to others. It was more like sharing photos with your friends, and you were like only really following your friends, and then it blew up, and then now it's like it's so different. But by that time, like I was in college, so I didn't really I actually didn't really have that kind of conversation with my dad. But I think again it came down to he helped build the confidence that I have, and I am more protected, I think, because of that. And I am comparing myself to others constantly, but I think I have a stronger barrier, and I'm able to like think about it like, okay, that's silly, like, or let me just quit this. Like I'll just end Instagram, right? I'm like, whatever, done. And then move on and be like, okay, what's next on the agenda? What am I doing today? What am I accomplishing? So I think, you can set yourself, or you can set your daughter up for success in that way, just like by helping her build her confidence. And then as far as social media goes, I mean, it's a battle for sure. But I think again, having that open communication with her and telling her like rather than just letting her explore this herself, tell her like there's like it's a lot of fake stuff out there. Like there's filters, there's edits, like never compare yourself to anyone, because you are you, and you should be proud of you, and you should love who you are, and that's all that matters, and people love you for you. So I think, yeah, just, you can do what you can. Social media is tough, but always be open with her and communicate constantly.
Yeah. So I'd love to know too. So you have two sisters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that had to be tough for your pops, I'm sure. Three of them. Oh my goodness. But and you talk about intentional time, right? And so having three girls, right, and trying to instill those same values and everything. How did your dad approach that? That's got to be tough, right? Of kind of giving each individual time. And did he have kind of like, hey, this is going to be date night, this week for one, date night next week for two, or kind of how did he approach that?
Yeah, I think
to reach getting what you needed.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, because we are all different, but we're also a really close-knit family. So we do a lot of things together. And my mom, she's awesome too. Like I'm just super lucky. But so I would say he spends a lot of time with all of us, and we do a lot of like family outings, family trips, even just like, little day trips. Like he would do we would do father-daughter activities through some of the organizations that I was a part of, and that time together with just me and my dad. And then he would do it with me and my little sister, and then me and my littlest sister. So he would definitely like section it off and have fun dates. And, we would change it up. Some of them were like go-kart racing or like mini golfing or whatever. But he also, he really instilled in all of us that sisters are forever. And he would always, he said that so much growing up that I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, cause I would want to go hang with my friends. Right. And he's like, okay, friends are great, but sisters are forever. I'm like, yeah. I know, but then really he meant that. And he showed that through always hanging out with all of us and encouraging us to hang out and like play together. And yeah, I would say he has an individual and unique relationship with each of us, but at the same time, like he was really good about spending time with all of us together and apart.
Yeah. And that's So, I've got two girls, right? And they're very different in some ways, but very similar in some ways.
Yeah.
And it's that same intentionality, right, that we talked about before of like knowing what each one needs.
Right.
I think, right? Like the needs for my oldest one are going to be a little bit different than what my younger one needs. Like my younger one is extremely artistic, extremely intelligent. She's 4 and she's doing like multiplication and stuff with math. Wow. She's like a genius.
Yeah.
But with that becomes a lot of different personalities, right? Like she's super smart, but struggles sometimes socially. And my older one is like a social butterfly, right? And she's talking to everybody. And so there's like different ways that I can connect with them and do different things with them to give them that attention and different things they need from me, like emotionally too. So I think, there's gonna be that too, that each kid is going to need similar things, but then also like you're going to have to parent differently for each kid. And just have that intentionality to it. So, but yeah, I agree with you. Sisters are forever. So that's what we tell them too. Like you guys are bonded for life. And like your friends are going to come and go, but your sister's going to be right there through it, thick and thin.
Yep. I love that. And yeah, I think knowing your daughter is so important, right? Just like you said, they're very different, but how you can connect and relate to one is going to be different from another. And just being aware of that is everything. And I don't know if you guys are all familiar with the love languages, but that's a really great place to start because you can start to understand like, okay, what does, and I think there's like even a love languages book for like your kids or whatever. So what do they need, right? Do they need words of affirmation? Do they need to be like pumped up? Or do they need physical touch? Do you need to like give them a big bear hug? Or do they need quality time? Like you can really explore what your daughter needs and be able to relate with her and connect with her in that way. And yeah, I would encourage everyone to like look into the love languages. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, no, that's a great book. I honestly haven't even thought about that for my kids, so I think that's a good starting point. If there is one for children, that'd be a great read. Because as they get older, obviously they're going to have them, but they got them when they're young too, right? Something they gear towards a little bit more. So
absolutely.
Well, so yeah, I would love everybody to go check out the book. It's out now, right, on Amazon. And then we'll link to the link on Amazon, and then link to Maddie to some of your resources as well. Sure. But awesome for coming on. Like, if you had to give dads one takeaway from your book, the Cliff Notes version, let's make sure they're being a better girl dad. Like, what advice would you give them in 30 seconds to a minute you think that would have the most impact?
I would say show up, be intentional, and have fun. Because at the end of the day, this is such a rewarding experience, and you can just wake up and live and go to bed and wake up and live and go to bed, or you can make the most out of this and have a great relationship with your daughter and set her up for success and enjoy every second of it. So I would say have a blast and good luck out there. And just anyone who's listening to this podcast is already, miles ahead of most dads. I think it's so incredible what you're doing. And for all the listeners out there, I think it's incredible that you're tuning in and trying to be a better version of yourself, a better dad, and ultimately a better girl dad if you have daughters. So just thank you. Your daughter is going to thank you later. And it's such a cool thing. And I hope that this, becomes a movement. I really do.
Yeah. Well, awesome, Maddie. Well, thank you for coming on. Girl dads out there, let's unite. Let's make sure we're doing better. We're bringing that intentionality, into our job as a dad. And I think our daughters will be all the better for it. So Maddie, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, guys, the book will be linked up in the show notes. You guys go out, grab a copy, and then, shoot Maddie a note and let her know how much it changed you as a dad. So with that, guys, we will hop on and see you on the next episode.